Thank you, Jeffrey, Brian, and Melty, and also thank you, Kimberly McQueen, for joining them. That was so beautiful. And now, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here and being a part of this service and being a part of this moment. I invite you now to join with each and every one of the others that are in here in partaking in a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in all the cool, calm oxygen around you. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow the waves of love and light to just wash over you in this moment. Let go of anything that may be concerning you, anything from the past, anything from the future. Just put it aside for now. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in love, breathing in light. And as you release the breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in this quiet moment. Open yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand. And let my words act as your own. For your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me. I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and gratefully speak these words. I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and I say, I am grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in the confidence and gratitude in saying, I am grateful for the good in your lives.
Okay. We ended a class yesterday of three long but beautiful Saturday sessions of future ministers, School of Ministry combined class. And yesterday we got into, one of the things we got into talking about was involution and evolution. And I asked them, I said, just between us, do you have any idea what that means? And they were pretty much like, no. But it's all over Ernest Holmes, and it's one of those things, you know, when it goes by, you look like you know what you're talking about. Sure, yeah. And so what we determined it to be was that you get involved with an idea, you involve the idea, you embody the idea, and then the idea takes form. And once it's in form, it continues to morph. It continues to change and adapt and evolve. So you create in yourself an idea, or sometimes we say we're visited by an idea just comes over us for what we want to create in our lives, and we get involved with it emotionally and commit to it, and the next thing it's birthed in form, and then it grows, and then it changes, much like a child does. The child grows and becomes an adult and becomes eventually perhaps a parent themselves. And so all of these ideas are out there in space and time, and they're all evolving. And this is out of this universal mind that we're discussing this month here with you, that has answers for us on every level. And why I bring all this up to you is because it's a different thought about evolution than we usually have. Usually it's the evolution of species, and stuff crawls up on dry land, and the gills turn into feet or something, and it, you know, right? And things evolve. Or we say human evolution. Well, human evolution, we think, oh, that's great. In the future, we'll be able to flap our arms and fly. In the future, we'll be able to pass through walls. We'll be able to live in all different times. It gets real science fiction-y, you know? But the greatest form of human evolution is the adaptation to the healthiest aspects of ourselves. Not the most flamboyant, not the most spectacular, but the healthiest, most basic aspects of ourselves, like love, like unconditional love. We're evolving in love as we go. And it looks like we're evolving by fits and starts. It looks like we're evolving by 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And perhaps that is the case in the long view over time. But when you come to a teaching like this, and this is what we also discussed yesterday, you're in the vanguard of thought. You really are. You're somebody who has decided that unconditional love, as Dr. King said, will have the final word in reality, and you've committed to that on some level. And it's not easy all the time because, you know, it's just simpler to resent and regret. It's just simpler, isn't it? To hold grudges than to let bygones be bygones. And it's just simpler, especially to forget that there are other people on this planet whose destiny is inextricably tied up with our own. Why? Because we don't see them. They're not here. They're not tugging on our sleeve. Well, the evolution that we're going through is a recognition of our oneness. Everything stems from oneness. This teaching of science of mind begins and ends with the idea that there's one life, and that life is spirit, and that life is all the life there is. And that doesn't just mean for our local and personal and private good. It means for the good of absolutely everybody. We can't make everybody else's choices for them, but we can make life easier for them. We can make life easier for our neighbors and for the people that are in our immediate vicinity, as well as people on the other side of the world. We start to care about one another. So I was thinking about this, like when I was a kid, when I was a child. You're going to hear a song in a few minutes, starts out when I was a child. Well, when I was a child, and the older you get, the more of these stories you get to tell. When I was a child, and everybody gets all kind of misty-eyed when we look back. Well, I'm not going to tell you that when I was a child everything was better than it is now, because that's not the case. And for one thing, when I was a child, it was not remarkable at all to see somebody take a huge bag of garbage and throw it out their car window onto the highway. It was not at all remarkable to see somebody just drop food wrappers in the street, not to mention cigarettes and all kinds of other crap, you know, and just walk on and leave it be. And if you remember the Odd Couple TV series with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, does anybody else remember that? Okay, there was an opening scene in the run up to it, the lead in to it, where the slob character Klugman throws a hot dog wrapper or something in the street, and Tony Randall spears it with his umbrella and picks it up and sticks it in his face. You know, like, no, don't do that. And this was funny, and it was getting you into the sense of the characters, that one was a neat freak and the other was a slob, you know. But now you look at that and you think, really? That's appalling that anybody would even think to do that, to throw trash in the street. And they started, when I was a kid, talking about pollution, water pollution and air pollution and littering, and they started fining people for littering in the street. You imagine? Now you think, now I realize you and I don't live in a pedestrian-oriented environment so much. So it's easier to throw stuff out the car window than drop it in the street here, I suppose. But we wouldn't do that. We just wouldn't do that. I remember when seatbelt laws, for the first car I had, didn't even have them, you know. And then seatbelt laws came along. Now it's automatic. You get in the car. For a while, they made cars you couldn't start till the seatbelts were fastened. And so what you learned to do was hook the seatbelt over the door lock button. And that way you fooled the car. That's kind of stupid, isn't it? But, you know, it's like nobody's going to tell me what to do. Well, we've evolved in thought, haven't we? And people would say, well, you know, I'm not going to wear seatbelts because they feel restrictive and all like this. But if I have an accident and I'm badly injured because I'm not wearing a seatbelt, while that primarily and certainly initially affects me and those who care about me, it also affects all the people who have insurance. It also affects the common weal, you know? Same thing if you don't wear a helmet riding your motorcycle. If I throw a piece of trash in the street, I walk on. I don't have to deal with that. But somebody coming behind me does. And when I was a kid, we had these things called telephone booths. Because people didn't have cell phones and you needed a phone booth. And they were handy things and they were all over the place. And they even had like phone books hanging on for a while they didn't even have them on a chain. They were just in there, you know. Then they put them in a cover and they had them hanging on a chain. And you'd go in these places and gradually over time what began to happen is they got filthier and filthier and nastier, and people started tearing the pages out of the phone book so it was useless to you, and people would urinate in these. No, not people, men. Men would urinate in these let's get real, in these telephone booths, and they were just nasty. And this is when I mentioned 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. This is like 8 steps back I'm talking about here. It's because are you not taking into consideration the next person who's going to come in this place? Are you not putting yourself in their place? Are you not even imagining how it would be if you needed a page out of the phone book, if you needed to speak in a receiver that's not gross, you know, if you needed cleanliness, if you needed order instead of chaos in your life? What we're gradually evolving toward is a recognition of the presence of other people in a compassionate kind of way. And I'm bringing all of this up because it's Earth Day coming up. It's also Passover coming up, and I wish you a very happy Passover. And thinking about this talk, I thought, well, maybe I should speak about both Passover and Earth Day, but I thought then I'd have them there till mid-afternoon. So next year you'll get a Passover talk. If you want to know about Passover, it's a beautiful holiday. It's deeply meaningful, and you can look it up. But for today, I want to kind of focus on Earth Day. Because there's something really critical going on right now in the world, which is this thing called climate change that we're all yelling at each other about, you know. And there are people in New Thought, as well as lots not in New Thought, who don't believe it's real, who think the whole thing's manufactured just to move us around and get us to buy electric cars instead of gas-powered ones and so on. Well, I've looked at the science, and I personally think it's real and it's really happening, but who cares what I think? What I do feel is important is that we not yell at each other quite so much, and that we try to reason together and come to some kind of clear conclusion about how things are. We might argue as to whether humans are responsible for the long arc of carbon footprint and all this sort of thing going on. There's, I suppose, conflicting evidence about this, but you can't deny when there's filth at your feet. You can't deny when there's a ditch out front of Creative Life here that has garbage in it that Sean has to dig out, okay, that comes out of the cars that go by. That's climate change. That's climate change right there. That's polluting the earth, polluting our mother, the earth. Why do we do this kind of thing? Because it's easy, convenient, also because we're angry. We're angry. We're mad at the boss of us. We're mad at the boss of us who doesn't respect us on the job, doesn't pay us enough, doesn't promote us enough, but we're not going to tell the boss that because it could get us fired and things could get ugly, so we'll throw some garbage out the car window instead, you know? This is what we do. We act out sideways when we're upset with one another because we haven't the nerve to directly communicate what our pain is. So we act out. We vandalize things. I was at a gas station. Yes, I have a car that takes gas. I was at a gas station the other night, and somebody had put a sticker on the gas pump that was obscene, very obscene, printed very nicely. They'd had these done up somewhere in some printer, maybe on somebody's home printer, but I mean, it wasn't just scrawled on there, and it was obscene, and it was stuck almost where you couldn't read the numbers, you know, the total thing. And I thought to myself, who does that? And I got all kind of up in judgment about it. And then I realized, okay, let's go back to the truth of our own being. And somebody's angry. Somebody's really angry, and they want people to know about it, so they put this thing here where random strangers would see it. But what they maybe didn't consider was their own mother might drive up to that gas pump to fill up her car and have to read this filth, or somebody else's mother, or somebody who just didn't need to see that right now because they're going through things that are more difficult than what that first person who did that act was. And this is what we have to think about, is what is this costing us as a society? And what is this costing me? And I want to live in peace. And we went over this yesterday in this class too, where Ernest Holmes says, you want the world to be at peace? You want everybody to get along? Then you have to start. It has to start with peace in your heart, because if it doesn't, all the rest of the world could get along, and you wouldn't notice it because you'll still be in conflict. See? So that's where it all begins with the self, and paying closer attention to what we're doing here and how we care about people. And very often when I've thought about Earth Day and climate change and trying to do the right thing, it's been in the context of our mother, the Earth, and we get metaphorical about it and we get sentimental about it and all. But the fact that's being brought to our attention more and more these days is that there are whole continents of people who did not willingly, knowingly participate in industrialization, whose lands are being flooded or stricken with drought, where the crops are withering, and they're having to pick up and think about moving somewhere. No one knows where, with nothing. And that's because those of us who live in a country like this one, who come from an industrialized society that's very much a throwaway society, very much consumer-oriented and very much about immediate gratification, we have been spoiled and we have been privileged, and we have neglected to realize that other people are paying the price for this, because we don't have to hear from them, because they don't vote for us, because they're not stockholders in our corporations. They're just faceless folk who live on the other side of the planet, and who cares what happens? And then we turn around. We in New Thought, or we not in New Thought, we turn around and we go into our prayer life and we go to God and we say, oh God, I try to be a good person. Will you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? Will you give me more stuff? Because I got to keep up with the Joneses, you know. And I don't know, you get where I'm going with this, and I do not mean to yell at you, but we've got to look at this. And the thing that Ernest Holmes and New Thought leaders bring us back to constantly is you cannot expect greater good for yourself than you wish for the other. It just doesn't work. You can get away with it in the short term. And this is what everybody hastens to point out when that point is raised. They'll say, well, there's so-and-so out there, and they don't give a darn about anybody else. And look at them. They're thriving and they're happy. And they're like, yeah. And remember this, too, that everybody that you perceive and their behavior and their life is what's called a snapshot of a waterfall. They're thriving right now in your field of vision, but you have no idea what's going on there. And they're setting themselves up for a fall if this is how they're running their lives. But again, we take the attention off of the other, what the other people are doing wrong, and we look at ourselves and we say, how can I expect to go to the God of my understanding and have a wonderful life, a banquet of good laid out for me, if I don't care who has to clean up after? If I don't care who's paying for all this? Who's paying for all this? That has to be at the forefront of my attention, and that is compassion. It's a different kind of compassion. It's a different wavelength of compassion than the kind of compassion that has us tending for the little bird with the broken wing, and, the sweet and sentimental and also very important type of compassion that we have in caring for each other. Compassion means simply to feel with. That's what the word means, to feel with. And so we feel with, and how would it be? And, where we live here, it seems like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, we get a major flood and everything, and we take care of each other. We help the neighbor. This center has played a large part in that as needed, And, well, there are people who are facing that. So the next time you hear there's a flood in a country you've never heard of, you have heard of floods, and you know what they're like. And you know what they're like to clean up after, and how long the remediation period can be. And maybe you've never experienced great hunger in your life, but you've experienced some. And just imagine what that's like. And always, when you've been hungry, you haven't had to go far. You haven't had to go far at all, like the refrigerator, right, or the store. You don't live in a food desert. We have stores with ample stuff. You can order it online. You can have it delivered to your door. It's all of this, okay? A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people, when it doesn't rain, they don't eat. And they have no idea when they're going to eat. They have no earthly idea. Just to remember that. Just to share a blessing with those people in your mind. Just to imagine that there is a power that's greater than you are. And this always is our refuge and our salvation. Is the recognition that there's a power greater than we are, right where we are, right where everyone is that's doing that which needs to be done. I'll never forget when Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans. In the TV coverage of it, they had a service from a Baptist church in Baton Rouge where a lot of the evacuees had gone who couldn't go further, who didn't come to Houston or Atlanta, but made it to Baton Rouge. And so there's this preacher, this African-American preacher. I don't know if they showed the whole service, but I sat through much of whatever it was, the clip, on the news. This man is speaking to a crowded hall made up largely of people who were not of his congregation but had come from New Orleans. And he said, right now, there are people sitting on rooftops downriver from us. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they are, but there is something that does know. And that is right parallel with what Ernest Holmes always used to say when somebody would ask him, say, well, what can I do about my problem, Ernest? You're all that in a bag of chips, so why don't you tell me what I can do about my problem? Ernest would say, I don't know. But there is something that does know. Let's go talk to that. Right? So there's this power that sees who needs what. We don't have to manage all that. We don't have to legislate all that. What we have to do is intend something. Intend. So what I recommend for each of us, and I'm doing this myself, is to have a greater and greater awareness of the impact that I have on my environment. That she is my mother, this earth. We are of this earth. Yes, we are of spirit, but spirit created this earth in a habitable way. And if you look at the earth science of it, it's really remarkable how this place, it's so remarkable we keep looking for other ones, Somewhere out there's a place it's got a carbon hydrogen balance, and it's got this, and it's got an atmosphere that is such and such, and it's got water that is potable, and somewhere out there's another place. Okay, there probably is. I'm sure there is. There has to be, just logically. But there's one here. There's one here already that's got what we need. It's got forests, and it's got beaches, and it's got mountains, and it's got this, and it's got amazing species of life, and they all kind of work together, and it makes things happen. And we just heard a beautiful song about spring. And the power that made this earth not only formed it more or less round, it's kind of egg-shaped in a way, and hung it out in space and put it around a star, not too close, not too far, but just right. It's a Three Bears kind of thing, right? Just right, where it's just far enough away that we don't roast and but not so far away that we freeze. And then it had it socked by something, some kind of meteor or planetoid or something in the early days of Earth, whacked into it and caused it to kind of wobble off center as it orbits. And that gives us seasons. That's why we have 4 seasons. Isn't that remarkable? And the closer you get to the equator, the more the seasons kind of blend together. And the further you get from the equator, the more pronounced the seasons are because of its relation to the sun. What mind did that? Who thought that up? What committee got together and said, well, I don't know how... Yeah, right? Boggles the mind. But here's the thing. I'll close with this. In this class just ended, everybody was bringing out their favorite Ernest Holmes. It was a course on Ernest Holmes teaching, so that's why we, way into that, marinated in that. And everybody trotted out their favorite Ernest Holmes quotations, and it was a beautiful, wonderful thing. We're scribbling it all down, and I said, well, here's mine, or one of them anyway. And it comes from the old practitioner training curriculum, where he says, the mind that made a star is the same mind you use. I just love that. Sweet, compact, and it says it in an active rather than a passive way. It doesn't say the mind that made a star is the same mind that made you, which is also true, but it renders the listener passive. Stars are created, you're created, this is created, that's created, stuff is churned out. But when it's the mind that made a star is the same mind you use, well, now you've got an obligation. Now you've got a responsibility. And I think what I'm going to do later this summer is do a series on Bible quotes that have been mangled. Would you like that? I guess you would. Okay. Because there are quotes out there that people throw out at each other, and so one. I said I was going to close with this, but I got to get this to you. Man has dominion over the earth. You know who wrote that? People. Think about this. Everything that says that the human species is the absolute crown of creation and is and ought to be in charge of everything and run everything and so on, everyone who ever said that, everyone who ever wrote that is a human. Now that's bias, okay? That's species bias right there. If you have dominion, if you have charge over something, then you have a responsibility to take care of it. And this is what we have to do with our earth. For the benefit of ourselves, yes. For the benefit of future generations, of our own spawn, yes, absolutely. But especially for the benefit of the people who do not experience the latitude of choice making that we have because of their economic and political and geographic positioning. The people who can't decide, say, I think I'll put solar panels on my house. Or I think I'll buy a waterless, not waterless, a tankless water heater. Waterless water heater would be quite a trick, but a tankless, that kind of thing. Where they can't kind of thumb through the catalog of upgrades to their lives. To think of these people in our choice making and encourage our leaders to do the same and vote to do the same, okay, and take action and speak out about this. This we owe. It's our legacy. So I'm going to treat now to know there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere radiant, everywhere manifesting. And this spirit, I am so grateful to this spirit for this, my mother, the earth, Gaia, this amazing planet on which I live. It's not too close and it's not too far from the source of energy. And it's got gravity. because of its metal core, and how all of this works, and it holds me fast, but not too fast, because I can jump and run and bound across the face of this planet, and yet I don't fall off and drift off into space. And I'm grateful for the oceans and the rivers and all their tributaries, all the bodies of water, the lakes, the Great Lakes, the small lakes, the salt lakes. I'm grateful for every creek and brook. I'm grateful for every mountain and hill. I'm grateful for deserts and forests and prairies and tundras and permafrost. I'm grateful for the poles and for all the living things, every species of being. And I'm grateful for the mind that made all this stuff up. And I'm grateful beyond measure for my place in that mind, for my ability to speak my word in faith, believing, and see things established, and once established, to see them change and evolve and grow for the benefit of all. So I affirm and know that wise and healthy choices are being made by all of us, each in our own way, that are affecting the destiny of this planet and all the people on it and those yet to come. I affirm and know one human family amid the family of all living things, and this human family is made up of my siblings as godlings, each and every one of them, whether I understand them or agree with them, and certainly whether or not I've met them and personally know them, because there are a great many out there that I do not. Yet I do know this: I live in the same mind that made them, and it knows them, and it knows what they need and how to deliver it. And so I affirm and know that wherever there is a need, right there with it is its remedy, For this knowing, for the way that it translates into action, and the action translates into greater and greater good than we have ever experienced together on this planet, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into that one life, that one mind, that one power, calling it done, and so it is.
As we come up to giving time, I just want to remind you that it does cost money to keep this center going. It costs money to do the broadcasting that we do every day and every week on Zoom online. And if you like our message, please share our message, but also we'd appreciate when you share parts of your good with us and you support us with your monetary contributions. There are lots of different ways you can do that. You can do that in person here with a check or cash. You can do it online. You can actually do it in the bookstore. And if you want to just pay in the bookstore once a week, once a month, you can go and do that. You can pay cash, or you can pay by credit card, or you can leave a check there. So there's lots of different ways that you can support us. And we truly, truly appreciate all your support that comes in. It's really valuable, and it's really appreciated. I need somebody to volunteer to, oh, Marissa's holding her hand up. So as we come to giving time, just either physically or mentally take your gift in your hand and then repeat after me. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
Now, the entire time Jesse was talking, I kept waiting for this quote. Okay? And if you look, they don't know who to attribute it to. So I'm just going to say that it is a Native American proverb. I found it. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our grandchildren. So.
It's attributed to Chief Seattle. He's
Oh.
a 19th century leader of the Duwamish and Suquamish Native American tribe.
Okay, so Chief Seattle.
They did.
They-
And there's a whole bio thing on it too.
And then I'm sure she just put that in chat.
I did.
So, which I will remind you, if you are in the room and want to know some of the links, there's two ways to get them. Go and look at our Facebook post. You can catch all the links in the chat. I also move them to the YouTube when I post the YouTube video up generally later at night. I try and get it done Sunday night, but it doesn't happen immediately. So I move those links over as well. So there's 2 places you can go to get the links that Jessie, because I'm sure she put a link in there about Passover and Earth Day and anything else that. The Odd Couple. Yep. She also put the one for The Odd Couple up there. So it's all in there. We do encourage you to go and check out. Daniel works very hard on this. So I know it was my brainchild, but Danielle does most of the work. So, all right. In that, it is an absolutely gorgeous day out there. As close to spring as we're going to get, and it may be our last spring-like day. So I'm going to encourage you to go out and enjoy it. Today and tomorrow, the weather is going to be as close as we get to perfect, right? It's beautiful. It's relatively cool. The sun is shining, but there are plenty of clouds. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. You're right. It is a three bears. So I'm going to go and encourage you to enjoy this 3 Bears Day. But before you do that, because this is what we're talking about. When Reverend Jesse talks about that place where nothing has ever been wrong, that's where we go. That's where we go. When we go into prayer, when we go into treatment, we go into that place where nothing has ever been wrong, because nothing can be wrong. And we marinate in that. We fill up with that, and then we bring it back to this possibly chaotic, possibly messy material existence that we are having. And then we spread that energy around, kind of like mulch, to make everything better, all right? So I'm inviting you to consciously enter into the sacred with me. Step into that place where nothing has ever been wrong. And know with me that there is one life, one power, one presence, one mind, one love. And that each of us live that life. We use that mind. We are that presence. And we are the channels for that love into this material existence. And it is in that knowing that all things become possible. That we reach out into our human family, to those that we don't know. We may never know, but we extend that love to them. And we do that also to all living beings. We extend that love. May we make wise choices. May we make healthy choices. May we consider others. And then remember that there are no others. May we be divine channels of love, always. And may there always be somebody there to love us back to ourselves when we forget. May you always know who you are. May you know that you are a beloved expression of the divine, always. And that is always the first place to go. You are a brilliant light. You are a divine spark. You are truth in motion. And all things are possible in love. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. And I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me who I am. And I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me to recognize every living being as my family. And I am grateful for a community that comes together to remind each other just of that, to love on each other and to love on the world. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that lets us send this out into the ether. I am grateful for our musicians, our practitioners, our ministers. And I am grateful because it just feels good to be grateful. And I release my word into the law that always says yes, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my
I
mind.
feel it in everything I
I
am.
feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
And I love it.
And so it is.
And so it is.